So this lesson on research methods is about sampling. Before we do it though, here's the 5 questions on the previous lesson: aims, questions and hypotheses. You know what to do. So, this is about sampling. This is an incredibly important lesson. It's an incredibly important little body of knowledge to learn because it's on every single exam, every single year somewhere. There'll be a question on sampling. So you must know this. You must be familiar with these key words: population, proportions, mix, accurate, reflect, representative sample, reliable and valid, and you must know about these procedures. So what do we mean by a sample? A sample is picking the people you're going to study. So it's not a method you use to study people. It's a method you use, or methods you can use to pick the people you're going to study. You start off with your population or sampling frame, all the people you might study. So if you're going to study mothers with kids under 1, every mother with a child under 1 is your population or your sampling frame. Now that is too many people to study. That's millions of people. So you can't do that. So you've got to pick some of them. That picking them is called sampling. They become your sample. Yeah. So how do you pick them? Well, you might use a random sample. You have a big list of all the women who are mothers with kids under 1, and you pick a few out at random. That's a random sample. You've got a list of 300,000, and you pick 1,000 of them, like you're playing bingo, like you're playing the lottery. The problem with that is you might accidentally, mathematically, get too many of one sort of person and not enough of another. You might get the social class mix a bit wrong. For example, too many working class, not enough middle class. So instead, you could use a stratified random sample. Again, you're talking about mothers, because under 1. Instead of one big pot, you have like 2 half-size pots, middle class and working class, and you pick half from those and half from those. Or you have 3 pots, middle class, working class, British Asian, Afro-Caribbean, different size pots, and you pick some from each pot. In that way, you get the correct mix of people. Your sample becomes representative. Yeah? So stratified random sample. Let's say you want to study a group of people who are difficult to study. Not mothers now with children under 1. That's easy. Let's say you now want to do drug dealers. There is no list of drug dealers. So you have to use a snowball sample. You find a drug dealer who will work with you, probably in prison. Takes a while to get their trust, all that business. Let's say it happens. Then you ask them loads of questions, do unstructured interviews, I'm guessing, with that drug dealer. And at the end, say, do you know anybody else who does the same as you've done and will talk to me? Will you get someone to talk to me? Yeah. And they will. They get two of their drug dealer mates to talk to you. And now you had 3 people. When you've spoken to those next bunch of lads, you say to them, do you know anyone who you could get to talk to me? And they say, yeah. And if those 2 get you 2 more, and now you've got, 7 people. Your sample is getting bigger as it goes along, like a snowball being rolled. That's a snowball sample. You only use a snowball sample if the group is difficult to study, difficult to get a list of names in the first place. Or you might decide, simple one is a systematic sample. You get a big list of names, everyone gets a number. I'm going to study every 3rd person. It's called a systematic sample. You go through the list and you pick every 3rd or 5th or 10th or whatever it is sample. Yeah? That's your systematic sample. Or a quota sample. Say, right, okay, I've now got to study a certain amount. I want to study, here's everyone I could talk to. I want to study 4 men who are of 50. So you 4 will do, right, I'll talk to you. Okay, now I want to speak to 3 women below 20. Oh, you 3 will do. It's a quota. You know how many you want from each group and you go and get them. It's called a quota sample. So let's go through it again quickly. Random sample, stratified random sample, snowball sample, systematic sample, quota sample. Why is it so important to get your sampling right? Because if you get it wrong, your data is rubbish. If you ask the wrong people, you're going to get the wrong answers. Yeah? And the fancy word for this is unreliable. If you have asked the wrong people, your data is unreliable. If your data is unreliable, your findings are invalid. They're not true. So let's say you want to know all about the effects of playing violent video games. Yeah? And you go and hand out questionnaires on this. And the questionnaires are brilliant. Yeah, they're really well constructed. But then you realise you can't get anyone to do it, so you go to an old people's home and you get 1,000 old people to fill the questionnaires in. Your sample's gone wrong. You've asked the wrong people. The questionnaires are going to come back saying playing violent video games has no effect on them. But that data is unreliable. Therefore, that finding, it has no effect, is invalid, not true.